There's a new mood in Nigeria's military at the moment. We begin with the change of guard in the military with the appointment of new service chiefs, after which President Bola Tinubu charged the military top brass to intensify efforts to defeat once and for all the scourge of terrorism, banditry and other criminal activities across the country. According to President Tinubu, Nigerians expect results and not excuses from them any longer, promising to provide all support needed to get the job done. Now, Tinubu gave the charge at the State House in Abuja while decorating the service chiefs with their new ranks as 4-star generals and 3-star generals. Meanwhile, President Donald Trump of the United States on Friday announced in a Truth Social post later shared on the White House X handle that he had designated Nigeria as a country of particular concern, citing what he describes as an existential threat to Christians in the country. The U.S. president also said that when Christians or any similar groups are slaughtered, quote, like it is happening in Nigeria, that is 3,100 versus 4,476 worldwide, something must be done. Those are his words. Well, in a swift reaction, the federal government has rejected Trump's remarks. In a statement by Nigeria's Minister of Foreign Affairs, the government said the claims do not reflect the situation on ground, noting that while it appreciates global concerns for human rights and religious freedom, the allegations were inaccurate, pointing out that under the leadership of President Tinubu, Nigeria remains committed to fighting terrorism, strengthening interfaith harmony, and protecting the lives and rights of all its people. Well, so glad to have joining me right here in the studio to help us understand all of this, Honorable Aliyu Gebi, the coordinator of the Fusion Center for Dialogue and Peace Processes. He's also the head of Department of Peace Building, Dialogue and Mediation at Operation Safe Corridor of the Defense Headquarters. Now, Honorable Gebi is also a former member of Nigeria's House of Representatives. So good to have you join me.
Good to be here. Thank you.
Let's start with the new mood within the military and President Tinubu's attempt to actually reset the Nigerian military in terms of appointments, giving fresh charges, trying to say, look, enough of these excuses. We need the military to just do this job once and for all, especially the fight against terrorism. And other Nigerians are asking, I mean, how soon can the government provide the wherewithal to back the actions to ensure that these new military chiefs don't just get to office and it's pretty difficult for them to be able to act?
Thank you very much, and it's good to see you again.
Yeah.
The change of guard is nothing but routine. The military has been one cohesive fighting force since democracy returned to the country. They've become exceptionally professional and competent in dealing with these modern contemporary challenges that we're facing. So it's just routine. And if you look at the precedents, General Irabo was at one point theater commander, then made CDS. CG Musa was also theater commander, then made CDS. And you can see that Shaibu was theater commander and is now chief of army staff, whereas the former chief of army staff is now CDS. So this shows coherence in terms of planning of succession and in terms of, again, doctrine. So to say that things are changing because the commander-in-chief is not happy is not entirely true.
Well, in his own words, he said, look, we need to just put this fight against terrorism to an end.
That's exactly the point. The most capable fighting force in the world still needs political direction. Without political direction, without political charge, then they would be left in limbo trying to decipher what political trajectory they should take. If you look at the most capable, allegedly, fighting force in the world, the American armed forces were in Afghanistan. But when the political direction changed and they were asked to leave everything and come home, they came home. So the most capable, competent fighting forces are subject to political direction. So unless there's clear political direction in I need you to do A, B, and C under this duration, then there would be the required political pressure to deliver. And also we're in a democratic dispensation. The president is supreme in the center, but then you have the subnationals where the governors are supreme. So the CDS, the military apparatus, is subject to the authority of the commander-in-chief. When the threats are in the states, the governors also must play a role. So this conflict in terms of direction and misalignment in terms of policies between the subnational and the federal is what causes some of the lagging behind in terms of the solution provision. If you look at, for example, when you say state governments are dialoguing with bandits, well, state governments have indigents, but federal government has citizens. And you cannot have a dialogue with somebody that has committed federal crimes without the input of the federal government, without aligning with the federal government, without the red lines being defined. So I think the military is in a difficult position, not an impossible one, but there is a need to align in terms of political directives at the center, as well as the subnationals. And
Honorable Gebi, I mean, this I actually learned is what put the former Chief of Defense Staff, Christopher Musa, in problem. I mean, there's this session of the National Security Council where he insists that the Nigerian military will not accede to the request of governors to continue to go into dialogue with terrorists, agreements with terrorists, because the terrorists don't keep their own part of the bargain. Could this have been part of the issues that led to his exit?
I don't think so. I mean, his exit is something that was again predicated on the whims of the commander-in-chief, under whose pleasure he served.
If he had expressed such a view, I mean, maybe for political reasons, the National Security Advisor, the federal government decides to go that way. But he feels that the military can actually do more. But the political authorities feel different.
It is because, again, we have a short attention span, we have collective selective amnesia, and we like to think of the glass always half empty. This is the same Ogasiji Musa as theater commander that was the champion of non-kinetic strategies and non-kinetic operations that saw to the creation of the Borno model. This is the same Ogasiji Musa that was chairman, steering committee of Operation Safe Corridor, and said the way out of this, we can't shoot our way out of it, we have to talk our way out of it. But you cannot talk your way out of it at the expense of the victims. This has always been his pivot. Operation Safe Corridor, just before he left, he made the charge throughout the last 2 years he was CDS. It must become victim-centric. You cannot seem to repay the perpetrator at the expense of the victim. So this lack of correlation in terms of policy at the strategic level and then at the operational and tactical level is what leads to these types of problems. No matter what happens, if you look at whatever, I can't remember how many delegations went to Colombia to study the world famous Colombia model. First, in Colombia, there was a referendum. Do you want us to dialogue with the FARC? When the answer was yes, then what type of dialogue? Everything was centered around the victim. So even if we want to reconcile, nobody's saying we shouldn't reconcile. In insurgencies, you can't shoot your way out of it, you must talk your way out of it. But it is the shooting that will enable the talking to happen. So we fight while we talk, and we talk while we fight. But the doctrine should be all-out peace or all-out war. So Ogasiji Musa has had no problem with alignment. He is a fighting officer, he's an infantry officer, one of the best Nigeria's produced, but there needs to be policy alignment and consistency, especially in a democratic setting.
Very inspiring talk there. Let's talk about how the focus, according to some generals I've been speaking with, should not be on just changing, those who are the head of, the military branches. Let's talk about the security architecture of Nigeria at the moment. Do we need to tinker with the system at the moment right now, like we did in the 80s during Babangida, including the idea of bringing the National Guard, a sort of pseudo-military force? Because if you listen to General Aliyu, the new Chief of Defense Staff, he says we have a policing problem in Nigeria. And the police is not being strengthened, and as a result of that, the military is doing police operations across the country.
But that's exactly the point. We are not strengthening the police, but we want to create something new without fixing what we have. So how about trying to fix what we have to ensure that it is compliant, 21st century capabilities deployed, and then if it doesn't work, then we can talk about the architecture. People are talking about state police. What is the civil defense corps? Therefore, so instead of creating forest guards, we've always had the forest rangers. In NSCDC, there's the agro rangers. So we have this knee-jerk reaction. We have become tactical. We are never strategic. There's a problem. When there's hue and cry over the problem, we try to throw a solution at it. Whereas we are thinking of only solving the problem but not resolving the issue. This is our problem. We have to think strategically. When President Bola Ahmed Tinubu came into office, one of the first things, everyone agreed this man is a financial genius. He's going to fix the finance. There was hue and cry in the beginning, but things are beginning to look great. You can take your debit card, travel anywhere in the world, spend your naira, convert it into dollars. So we need to give things strategic time. There has to be gestation time, lag time before implementation. But because we are so impatient, rightfully so in most cases, because of the problems we have seen in the country, but we need to become a bit more strategic. So if we're going to suffer for 1 year, let us agree to suffer for 1 year so that the next 3 years would be absolutely fantastic.
But the people have to be part of the strategy. They really need to know that the suffering is not going to be a political suffering.
You are absolutely correct. The last time you and I had an engagement here, I told you we do not communicate government policies the right way. We do not have any communication strategy that is automatic, just deployed, unless there is a problem before you see people who should otherwise be engaging citizens come into the television to talk to citizens. This should be consistently coherent.
Sort of a national security communication center for citizens.
There are many of them. If you remember, during the Goodluck administration, the Omeri committee, that was a fantastic idea. That was in charge of, giving information about the theater. So now when you hear stories that 100,000 people have defected from Boko Haram, and there is no explanation, nobody comes up to be queried, to be interrogated, for people to be convinced that this is happening organically and our military is winning. Another example is, just a few months ago, 3 of the nastiest human beings on this planet, terrorists, were apprehended by joint operations coordinated by the NSA, the DSS, and the military. Who is talking about them today? Nobody's talking about them. Again, because we have not made it a point to keep updating our citizens on what happened, what they were about to do, how nasty these guys were, and what they were planning to do, and how they were arrested, and Shekau is dead. Nobody remembers that Shekau is dead.
Yeah, man.
Right.
That's what usually happens. When government wins, I mean, it just goes down. And the government doesn't also know how to communicate.
That's exactly the
issues.
Point. That's exactly
now, let's
the
go to the current issue at hand right now. Nigeria is in the eye of the storm with the Americans slamming us with the CPC. Country of particular concern by the Trump administration. I mean, we had this in the first term of Trump, and then this is happening again. What exactly have we been doing wrong that we haven't done right?
No, I think before I try to answer, I may not have the competence since I'm not a diplomat, but I'll answer as a failed politician and a citizen of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. I would say we should also slam a CPC on the United States.
Well, it's only the US that does that globally.
Exactly. What gives the United States that moral authority? What happened if they're talking about genocide? What is going on in the Sudan? How come Donald Trump has not talked about the Sudan? What has happened in Gaza that is still happening? How long did it take America to come round to doing this wishy-washy peace agreement? So we need to call ourselves with the name that we want others to call ourselves. Is there problems in Nigeria? Yes. But if, as a Nigerian, I would not say Muslims are killed, or Christians are killed, or Tiv is killed, or Fulani is killed. Nigerians are being killed. The same way the Americans would say Americans are being killed, not somebody that is a Muslim or a Christian or a Mormon. So this lack of identity that seems to be reinforced from external influence is part of our greatest problem. And I said this in this theater before. I hope that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu will be the president to craft a national identity based on consensus, tolerance, patience, and understanding. But as long as we will keep saying Muslims died, Christians died, Fulani killed, the Tiv died, Nigerians are dying.
Well, the Americans are driving this conversation, and then a whole lot of people have been saying that, look, we've had instances where we've seen Christians actually being killed, the Benue Plateau and all of that. But also, we've also seen Muslims being bombed in mosque and all of that. But the government narrative, and I mean, I've spoken with some lobbyists, and they say the government lost that like 3 to 4 weeks proud to now window to actually say this is what we are doing. The communication was very poor. I mean, with people like you around them, they don't listen to what's happening.
You are correct. I think Nigeria, is camera shy, frankly speaking. If you look at the relationship between Nigeria and Niger, as bad as it was, there was a point when the same thing that was happening in Mali was happening in Niger, when there wasn't a drop of petrol. Nigeria quietly, through the office of the NSA, coordinated with the Minister of Foreign Affairs, the presidency, and the military, sent 300 trucks of PMS.
Just like the way the Malians are also seeking support through the back door.
But Niamey never recognized that, never put it out there. And Nigeria, being the older brother, did not come out to say A, B, C, D. Again, someone has to be the adult in the room. So I think it is time for Nigeria to stop being the adult in the room, also to play like the children. For example, if you are talking about Donald Trump, one of the closest people to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is President Macron of France. Why is he not interceding on behalf of his friend, if not on behalf of Nigeria? He should intercede and say the truth and set it correct. After all, he's been in Nigeria and he has roots in Nigeria. But the biggest lobby group that still, I've said this before, I will say that we have not been able to harness is our Igbo brothers in diaspora. They are the biggest, most successful diaspora in the United States of America. In fact, of any diaspora group. They permeate the entire leadership strata of the United States of America. But we are not engaging them. For them, when the issues come up, for them to lobby positively, objectively, on behalf of Nigeria. So that integration has to happen. Unless we integrate the Igbos into the mainstream of Nigerian polity and policy, we will not get that communication strategy.
Well, you and I know that, I mean, politically, there's a fear within the political elites in Nigeria as to what happened in 1966, if it should not continue. And despite the fact that there have been these calls for us to move away from that and build a nation, people just still want to, cling to
but
their regions and all of that.
Again, you are absolutely correct. But these are imaginary differences that are being reinforced by those who seek to see us as their subjects.
For decades.
You're absolutely correct. Yeah, but the problem is, Sambo, up till now, when you are filling a form in Nigeria, you put indigene, you put religion. Why? I'm a Nigerian. That's all that should matter. So we are either citizens or we are subjects. But it is this migration from subjecthood to citizenhood that is our problem. There is a group of Nigerians across the entire space of Nigeria who seek to retain control over Nigeria, who seek to subjugate the rest of us and treat us as subjects. Bola Ahmed Tinubu doesn't seem to be part of that group. And this is why he has liberal policies, and this is why he will be fought. Buhari also was not part of that group. And you saw what happened with Buhari. So unless we allow the younger generation that are coming out who do not understand the concept of identity other than being a citizen of a space, a citizen of humanity, for them to decide and chart a way forward, we will still be held back by our own prejudices of the past. When Sheikh Tinubu, for example, goes out, you see Muslims, Christians, Northerners, Southerners, Easterners, foreigners, everyone supporting the young man. Why? Because he's a symbol of the new generation of identity-based definitions in terms of who a Nigerian is.
All right. Now, let's talk about the implications of this country of particular concern designation by the United States. I mean, one of the things here is that we may not get military assistance going forward by the U.S. government. And then, of course, there are some other ones. It may eventually lead to an economic issue. But if we don't get security support from the U.S., where else do we turn to? Because you would have seen where Onanuga, the president media advisor, was, replying Marco Rubio and said that, look, what we need is military support to be able to curb these killings. Of those who want to kill Christians, kill Muslims and all of that, not all of these designations.
But then before I answer that, how are you sure that's not President Trump's strategy to bring us to our knees, to come begging for him to sell weapons at a very exorbitant rate? Perhaps not the best weapons in the world. Perhaps to force us. We have a principle of non-alignment, but to box us into a corner. How are you sure that's not what he's doing? But going back to support from the United States of America, who have been our strategic partner all along, and we appreciate everything that they have done. But there's a lot that they have not done. You remember the procurement of the Super Tucanos. You remember the procurements of arms and ammunition, the Leahy Law, and there was a time a serving CDI was denied visa officially to go to the United States. There was a time a CDS was also denied visa to go to the United States. Nigeria maintains a principle of non-alignment. We have friends everywhere. Nigeria is surrounded by francophone countries. What do they expect us to do? When we started fighting Boko Haram, weapons were not sold to us. In fact, our hands and legs were bound and tied. We had to become so ingenious to find a way to battle out of this quagmire that we found ourselves. And this is also part of, again, a global problem. It's not just an isolated problem that is Nigeria-centric. It is something that will transcend the entire globe, as we have seen. So it is not in the interest of Donald Trump's White House to say, like, they are the monitor in the classroom or the moral police. How dare he? He does not have that authority.
Well, there are he's the president of the U.S.
Yeah, but he's not the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. If we don't have your friendship, we can get friendship other
yeah, but we also have Nigerian citizens who are back in the U.S. who are saying that, look, we need to do to protect minorities, whether you're religious minority or ethnic minority. The federal government of Nigeria owes it a right, especially under a Muslim ticket, to ensure that there's no feeling of marginalization by Christians.
You see, people are just trying to be clever by half. There is no group of Nigerians that does not feel or did not feel marginalized at one point or the other. It is the nature of our democracy which is still evolving. When you are a president in Nigeria, first you are seen as a tribal leader. First, even the outlook of how you wear, what you appoint, etc. This is the basis of our fragile yet strong union. So we need to discuss on basis of rational understanding, not quota system. Let the best from within us aspire to lead us and let them lead us regardless of who they are. Not that the worst of us should lead us only because it is their turn or there is some gentleman agreement or whatever. So first we need to define that basis of identity. After all, what is Trump doing? Is he not coming down on minorities? Is that not what we have been accused of? Is he not marginalizing everybody? Is he not putting blacks, Hispanics, etc. in danger? Is he not threatening to even invade another country? I read a very interesting argument this morning when someone was saying, look at Haiti, one of the poorest countries in the world, neighbor to one of the richest countries in the world. You have not solved that problem yet. You are going halfway across the Atlantic to talk about some perceived marginalization. Or is he saying that the pontiff, or the leader of the Catholic faith who put out a statement was not correct? Or perhaps His alleged envoy that met our president in Rome on the sidelines of the Aqaba process meeting that made his statement, he wasn't speaking for the White House. So President Trump, with due respect, has enough on his plate. The tariffs that he has put, the upheavals, he did not win the Nobel Peace Prize. If he's able to solve the problems in the world, Nigeria would be the first to recommend him, but I think he needs to, with due respect, back off and allow us to solve our problems.
All right, as we try to conclude this conversation, let's talk about Nigeria's response and then, of course, the charge to the new service chiefs. I mean, you would have seen with all the divisions that we're having now, allegations of coup or no coup and all of that, military discipline. What exactly should these new service chiefs be doing to ensure that there's cohesion and support the president in ensuring that, we go off this list?
There is a chain of command. There is the commander-in-chief and there are his service chiefs. There is the NSA. We are not recreating the wheel. It already exists. All these new officers, fine officers, warriors, war makers, peacemakers have worked together. There is absolutely no crack in the military. It is something that continues just as our democracy has continued to endure. So it is people who are not happy with the status that Nigeria is inevitably going to achieve that are trying to cause these fractures. The military will continue fighting. Of course, the military will continue to adapt to the needs of the contemporary challenges, but the military needs political direction, unwavering, unambiguous political direction, not political direction that you have to interpret from body language, precise, concise, direct language. What do you need? What are the benchmarks? What are the yardsticks? What do you need to deliver this? For me, the charge would be crush the bandits, finish the bandits, finish banditry. That's the first one. Boko Haram, this resurgence, whatever, we have to make peace with Niger. We didn't make peace with Niger. Up till now, we have not made peace with Niger. Even if we do solve our problem, as long as Niger is not solved, we have not solved our problem. Chad has issues. Sudan is just next door. Some countries are allegedly destabilizing those other two countries. Then you have Cameroon that has just undergone a very volatile electoral process. We have problems around us. Bilaterally, I think we should reach out. It is in our best interest to stabilize Niger, to stabilize Chad, to ensure the transition in Cameroon happens the way that the will of the citizens wanted, and also to aid Benin Republic. Benin Republic is lost in this conversation for some reason. We've forgotten that when ECOWAS put the embargo and border closure, and Benin Republic complied 100%. But Jenim is in the northern part of Benin Republic as part of the Tillaberi annex of evil. And still there is problem between Benin Republic and Niger. So Nigeria needs to look a little bit more outward, solve the problem from afar before it comes here, because it will come here. If rumors and tabloid information, anything to go by, what happened in Mali, the alleged recovery of the Emiratis and the horrendous amount of money that was given to Jenim. Where is that money going to go to? Already Jenim, they have been in Nigeria for a very long time. This is just the first time that they are certain they are here. So that money is going to push southwards. So Nigeria needs to play that game very well. And this is why we've always suggested to the president, to the foreign minister perhaps, that there's a need to have a special envoy to the AES and the Sahel. There needs to be a special envoy to Sudan.
Babagana Kingibe was
Babagana Kingibe was ECOWAS envoy to Chad on transition. All right. We have one ambassador in the entire Sahelian space, former CDI AVM Usman in Niger, but we need also to stabilize Sudan. The two wearing generals, I guarantee you, at one point or the other, both of them served under some Nigerian commander. And some of these commanders are still alive. So Nigeria needs to not just look outside the continent of Africa. We need to look to our neighbors. If we don't stabilize the Sahel, no matter the level of prosperity and security in Nigeria, we'll still be vulnerable. All
right, just before I let you go very quickly, what word do you have for these communities that continue to get into agreements with bandits and all this
there can be no agreement without red lines. There can be no agreement without traditional restorative or punitive justice. There cannot be any agreement that is not sanctioned by the federal government. There has to be a framework. There has to be something that is sustainable. Governors come and go every 8 years. Federal government is permanent. So governors cannot be seen to procure negative peace just for the exigencies of politics and leave it simmering, compounding, then go, and then the federal government takes up, and then the military again is overstretched. We should have learned from the Boko Haram and other crises. So no dialogue unless there is a framework that the federal government ratifies, defines, and assents to. Otherwise, if the states are leading it, then I think we're going to have more problems in the future. All right.
We must thank you so much for immense wealth of knowledge. Honorable Aliyu Gebi is the coordinator of the Fusion Center for Dialogue and Peace Processes, and of course, head of the Department of Peace Building dialogue and mediation in operation at the Operation Safe Corridor at the Defense Headquarters. He's also a former member of the House of Representatives, and I heard him saying he's a failed politician. Well, I mean, you were once in the House, right?
I failed.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
And we thank you for all you do for the people of Nigeria.
Thank you.
And you have our best wishes always.